We have a system we use about PODS where we sit in a group about 5 or 6 in front of our teachers, and it helps a lot with us as students because it's not only bringing us closer in together as students and learning more about each other.
I like having a PODS system because our teacher's in the middle while our students are around her, and I feel like she has more time to focus on our students instead of one at a time because she could be working with multiple students at once. We don't really have to be waiting as long, like waiting for turns. Like she could attend all of us at once, and that'll help us get our work done quicker.
At the beginning of the PODS, it was very hard. I'm not gonna lie, to get my mindset to do this stuff.
The kids at first were very confused. They didn't know where to sit. Some of them kind of panicked. A few of my kids do have anxiety. Those were the ones that were a little bit harder to get them used to the system.
I really like to move around the room and help students, but then I couldn't help multiple students at once. And so that was really frustrating. I felt like I couldn't work with and really get connections with students, with enough students in the day.
As a new teacher, I thought that was great that we had this pod set up, but I often found myself getting stuck at my desk because I was learning curriculum or just working on my computer, and I feel like that's probably how a lot of teachers feel now without having pods.
At first I didn't believe it. I was really, really excited because my desk is in the corner, and most of my kids, when they would come in, would hide in the back of the room on the opposite side, and half the time I wouldn't even know they were there because they were just so quiet and they would never come, and only about 3 desks in front of my desk were available for them. And so I regularly had to get up and go like search and hunt down kids.
I noticed that students needed to be scheduled better, whereas when students could come in freely, just find an open desk, now they needed to sit with the teacher where they were getting the instruction, and there's only a limited number of desks, so it showed the students that to get the attention from their teacher, they need to be there at the appropriate time so that they can be in the pod with you and have that interaction.
One of the things that I think was probably the most challenging about the pods right off the bat is that it's just something new. Just like anywhere else that you're working or anywhere else that you might be, whether you're in your classroom or not, anytime you have a new initiative or you're trying to do something that's a little bit outside the norm of what you're used to, there's obviously going to be some issues and some growing pains that come along with that.
When we first started the pods, it was awkward because we were sitting next to everyone, and it was weird at first because you were sitting so close to other people. So it took a while to get used to, but in the end it's a lot better.
I think one of the earliest things that we struggle with is just getting us used to not being in our home base behind our desks and putting us back in a place that we're a lot closer to students, which ultimately I think ends up being the biggest strength of the pods as well.
Having the pods and helps the kids to keep each other accountable. So the kids that really wanted to work, we empowered them to say, you know what, I'm trying to do my work right now, and then they would go back to work.
The days that I go to the pod and I get to sit with them, I feel like I taught a lot more that day. I get to check in with the students, even when they're just working quietly. I can go around and say, hey, how are you doing? Do you actually understand that concept? And a lot of the times they say no. And then I get to have that authentic learning versus them realizing, oh, I have a question, I should ask it. Instead, I recognize it because I'm sitting there with the students.
We are forced to be a little bit more on when we're in front of the kids and when we're interacting with them in a way that they're kind of circled around us in a more classroom-like environment than we were when we were just hiding behind our desks or waiting for students to show up and possibly not having them come at the right time.
It runs itself now. I have a schedule for these guys. They know their schedule. If they don't make an appointment, they're calling me, their moms are calling me. There's a lot of communication going on because I am adamant and I do not bend. That is your time. Like if you miss your appointment on Tuesday, no, you can't come in on Wednesday, just whenever you want to. Because again, you don't get to do that to a doctor, you don't get to do it to a dentist, you don't get to do it to a lawyer, you don't get to do that to anybody in the outside world. What are you teaching these kids if you just let them run over you all the time?
Now, several of my students that were like the loners and didn't really have any friends, They know other kids here at the school. It's been a great tool, not just for the education side and being able to work with kids more one-on-one, and if kids are working on the same credit at multiple times, being able to connect them. It's been more than just that. It's made a lot of social connections for our kids, and I think it's really helped on that aspect of it as well.
I did have a student come in and she was not on task, and 3 other students were helping me just blast her with positivity on getting it done, because she's always, I'm not gonna get it done. And no, you can't talk that way. And that's coming from the students. It's not coming from some old guy that doesn't know what they've been through. It's coming from their peers, and it happens all the time. And that positivity, that sometimes you have to teach that, but once you get that going, once you show them that, you know, they're in the same boat, they tend to help each other out a lot more.
I've been sending in way more credits this month.
My learning habits have improved because my teacher, Mr. Vance, has been in front of me. He sits there and he's able to communicate with all of us to make sure we're all on task. He's also able to, you know, make sure we're not distracted, we're not, you know, talking to each other on our phones, anything like that.
I think it keeps everybody more accountable by having the pods. It makes it a lot easier for us to keep our students accountable. They can't sit facing the opposite direction from us and mess around on their phones anymore. It's a lot easier to redirect them. It's definitely a lot easier to notice when a student might be giving you some nonverbal clues that they're not understanding what they're doing. So you can pick up on things like they're making faces, or they're dazing off, or they are writing things out and you can kind of see what they're writing about, but it's not actually what they're supposed to be doing.
It has made me more organized. I have to be proactive instead of reactive. I know every one of my students and what they're working on. Some of them I know more than I want to, because we're so engaged all the time. And then another positivity that comes out of it is it's not just me one-on-one with a student.
Overall, I have been really relieved to have this new setup, and I can't even imagine going back to having students in rows, because now I'm able to have the students work together. I've noticed that the students have become more of a community, and my supervising students all know each other. They greet each other when they come in for their appointments on time. They've exchanged numbers, they study together, and they're more of a cohesive team. And I think just the overall relationship between myself and the students has grown because I get to spend more time sitting next to them.
I really like the school system and I really like what they're doing. I really do enjoy the changes that they're doing because it's bettering us all together as a whole.